The government should never be allowed to team up with giant corporations to target and destroy everyday Americans, but that is exactly what's happening more and more often. And today I'm going to be interviewing someone who is personally targeted by the DOJ with the full backing of a powerful corporation. We're going to be talking about how this is becoming a dangerous pattern, big corporations pressuring federal agencies to weaponize the justice system against regular citizens. Most people can't fight back against unlimited government funding and a prosecution machine that almost never loses. This is not life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is not freedom. The news you need to know, but with solutions and hope. This is Get Free with Christy Lee.
What ends up happening in corporate America these days, which is fascinating, if you're a big company like Google, this happened to a friend of mine at Google. Mm-hmm. He worked at Google. He worked for Waymo, which is Google's like self-driving thing. Yeah. He left and went to Uber.
Oh, yeah, I know this guy. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Google picked up the phone. They called a law firm like Latham Watkins. I'm not picking a Latham. Great firm. Or Ropes and Gray or Kramer 11. Pick your big law firm, right? And they said, hey, we want to report a crime. Now, why don't you call the police or the FBI or something like that? You don't, because at these big law firms, almost everyone at those firms, the partners, and I know this because I've paid every law firm in New York City, these law firms are staffed with people who were prosecutors. So what they do is they say, oh, let's say you're a partner at one of these big law firms, and a guy from Google calls, and you say, well, you don't even have to look. You know Google's your biggest client. They may be paying the firm 10, 20 million. Some of that's your salary. and the guy's calling and said, hey, John, you've been my lawyer for 8 years. You've been representing Google great. We just got ripped off by this guy. I need you to call the prosecutors that you used to work with, and you got to go indict this guy. Mm. And this poor guy, Andrew's name, he got indicted. And the pretext was that he stole trade secrets.
And that's how the weaponization works. And Vandersteel nailed it when she said, this is the quiet way big corporations crush regular Americans, pointing to Ed Rosenberg's Amazon case, Amy Nelson, Mike Kale and his wife, the One Taste situation, and so many more. Joining me now is Ed Rosenberg, leader of ASGTG, a victim of this system and a relentless fighter against the weaponization of our justice system. Ed, it's so great to have you on. I've had Amy Nelson on in the past. Her story is and was horrifying. So thanks for being here to make sure that we continue to draw attention to this huge problem that we still have.
Thanks for having, and I appreciate you shining a light to this issue. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. You know, many of us, we woke up to the threat of the weaponization of government when we saw what happened to pro-life advocates, G6ers, and parents that were labeled domestic terrorists under the Biden administration. But this threat to our liberty, this has been going on in this fashion, I think far longer than people realize. And unfortunately, it seems to be continuing. Is that how you see it?
It does seem like, although there's more attention being brought because of cases like this, and I think social media has made communities of people who are victims of this, and they see the same type of playbook, and I think the exposure is going to slow things down. I also think the president, who so far only addressed weaponization at the political theater, has not yet addressed this, and I think once he's made aware of the issue, I think he would not be happy about it.
No, I don't think so either. So tell us about your story. Your story is, as I understand it, is that you were just trying to help others that are Amazon sellers. You started a group to help these folks continue selling their products because there was too often people getting infractions or kicked off from selling, and there wasn't really a good way to communicate with the large corporation to understand why their livelihood, their ability to sell was suddenly shut off. So can you explain that further?
Yeah, so in order to explain this whole story, I need to give you a little bit of a background about third-party sellers that sell on Amazon. When you buy a product on Amazon, so around 60% of the products now are from third-party sellers, such as myself or from one of millions of others who sell on Amazon. Now, when you commit to sell on Amazon, the reason why you do that is because they have all the customers and they control pretty much the entire marketplace industry. And what happened in my story is I'm a seller starting from like the late 90s, way before Amazon even started selling. And what happened was I had a pretty successful online business on eBay, then Amazon, and going in 2015, my seller account was suspended. And especially then, but still so now, they have a very unclear process on how a legitimate seller can get back once he's suspended. And there's no one to really talk to. And there's thousands of documented cases online where Amazon seemingly unfairly, they would hold your goods because they hold your inventory, and they would suspend you and hold your money to the tune of millions of dollars. So when I got suspended, and I'm a by-the-book seller, what I did was I needed help to get back. So just for myself, I opened up a WhatsApp group, and this WhatsApp to create a community of other sellers who are dealing with it, so I can have help. And the group became very large. The WhatsApp group, which at that point was limited at 99, got filled in a couple of days. So I moved it to Telegram, which has an unlimited amount of members, and then it's also on Facebook, and I have it on Twitter, and I have on Reddit, and I have on WhatsApp. And I built a community which is called Amazon Sellers Group Telegram, with the stated goal of learning the rules, following the rules, and when necessary, having transparency, asking Amazon to be more transparent with our sellers so that we can follow the rules. But we're rule followers almost to the extreme. I've written over 500 blogs, and every single one is always telling people, you got to follow the rules, you got to follow the rules. But when the rules are unclear or when Amazon gets it wrong, so we would, using various means, like on Twitter or on contacting executives directly, we would contact them and we would tell them, hey, here's a seller with 50 employees, and if you guys got it wrong and no one's responding to him, this guy needs help, or this business is going to go down the tubes. And what happened was I realized very quickly that there's no way for a legitimate seller to, through the normal process, often to escalate issues when the system gets it wrong. So what happened in 2016, 2017, there was a community, a lot of it was international, it was called Black Hat Selling. And the Wall Street Journal did an article about it, the New York Times did an article about it. It was well known within the community because there was no way within the normal system for a suspended seller of getting reinstated. They developed this underhanded black market where insiders from Amazon would be taking bribes and opening up accounts. So when I saw this, I contacted Amazon through proper channels, through LinkedIn. I was invited there multiple times, everything above board by the book. And I told them, what should I do when you have a legitimate seller that gets suspended and there's nothing left to do? We don't want to use the underhanded bribery tactics because they're going to open up even counterfeit accounts. We want you to make the decision, but I need a way to communicate with you. And I became sort of a liaison for legitimate sellers. And these legitimate sellers, and the business was on the line, became suspended unfairly. I became like a lifeline, like a liaison to the legitimate above board channels in Amazon who reinstated these accounts. Now this happened in the thousands of times. I didn't even charge money when I was doing these escalations. So in other words, the seller would come to me, he would try to get back through another consultant. It didn't work. So I would contact one of these senior executives at Amazon and I would give them the summary. I would tell them the whole story, and they knew me from social media. They reviewed it, and over 1,200 times these accounts got reinstated and I never took a penny. So I was like the anti-bribery guy. I was like the anti-corruption guy. You had the bribery, which was bad because it opened up even accounts, based on the money. People were charging $50,000, $100,000. And I was the anti-bribery guy in that I went through official channels above board, invited to Amazon. So I am known, and even now, throughout the industry as the guy that's begging people to follow the rules. So now how do I end up being the lead defendant of $100 million scheme if I'm devoting my life into stopping corruption, and I'm doing everything above board, and all my blogs are pro Amazon, and all my blogs are telling everyone to follow the rules and to only have one account. How did this happen? You can imagine the shock of the seller community when they hear that the champion of legitimate selling became the lead defendant of a major case. It didn't even make sense. So in order to understand that, there's another background story which happened, which is going to explain it, in that in 2015, 2016, so I besides the advocacy work, what I do, I also do consulting, and I have a lot of different partners, and I was involved with a couple of shady characters who they became shady later on, but early on they were just regular consultants, and they were doing regular business with me. And as soon as I saw that they were up to no good, and I didn't like the way they maneuvered, they hacked my emails, and they stole my email list. And what they would do is they would, through side chats like through Telegram or WhatsApp, they would threaten that if I don't listen to them, then they're going to mass email my entire group bad things about me. And nobody wants that. It's like if you're a second grade teacher and somebody threatens you, that if you don't, knock on this coffee cup, I'm going to tell your whole community that you're molesting kids. You're not going to want that, even if it's not true. And they were claiming that I was bribing Amazon employees, even though I was not. So what I would do is they would, for example, send me an email that I can do review manipulation. And they would do a gun to my head. And I would say, okay, great. But I wasn't actually doing it. That was my entire connection to them, is that I had some form of communication. Like every few months I would respond to them. And I wasn't actually doing it, but because I was being blackmailed, I wouldn't just ignore them. I would just try to make sure that they're not going to attack me. So what happened was, when I saw the indictment, this is what it said in the indictment. It said two things. Was first of all, it said that I'm connected to this group of bad actors. Now, I wasn't connected to this group of bad actors. It was just a few emails which I was connected to them, which had additional information of me being blackmailed, which led me to communicate with them, but I didn't actually do anything with them. And if you don't have that additional information, it looks like the head of legitimate selling is communicating with these bad characters. So that was part of it. And the second part is, what would happen is, because I had this ethical escalation pathway into Amazon, so I would have a lot of different consultants coming to me saying that they worked on this case and Amazon's getting it wrong. Can you escalate it for free as a liaison to Amazon proper? So one of these guys came to me, and he said that I worked with a seller, and I think he's a legitimate guy. Can you escalate into Amazon? So I said, yeah, I can do it, but only if I do it for free. Let me first speak to the seller, and if he's legitimate, then I would do it. So I spoke to the seller. He sounded okay. I escalated it to legitimate channels like I've done over 1,200 times. The account was reinstated, totally legit. And the next thing I know, a day later, my wife tells me that somebody deposited $55,000 into my account. And these framed. And these two shady characters said to each other, without me in it, that I paid somebody high up in Amazon. So now it looked like there's a smoking gun. And it looked like everything I do is through shady tactics, because I opened up an account through somebody very high in Amazon, and then $55,000 ended up in my account. What they didn't know is that this same guy who was threatening to mass email me and was blackmailing me, framed me to make it look like I'm connected to these executives, and I'm not, and I am connected, but it's completely kosher, it's completely legitimate. So those were the two things. The first thing was that there were a few emails between me and these shady characters, which makes sense if you understand the additional information. And the second thing, which happened like 2 years later, was a frame job. And it was the same people. And then they said, so think about it. I'm hacked. I'm being blackmailed. Then I'm being mass emailed, because they eventually mass emailed my group anyways. Even though I was trying to get them not to, because I didn't want it, like I told you before, even though I didn't do anything wrong, nobody wants to get mass emailed. I'm hacked, blackmailed, mass emailed, framed, and then I'm indicted by being part of these guys who are framing and blackmailing me, saying that I'm part of them, and I'm obviously the victim of these vicious people who are connecting, and they're not letting go of me. So the entire indictment was a few things which, had you had the additional information, would clearly explain that I have nothing to do with these guys, and everything I do is above board. So when this happened, I said it's completely not true, and I didn't understand when nobody spoke to me, because if anybody would have spoken to me, it would have been very easily explained with this additional information. So was I clear so far?
So far, but as far as the money deposited into your account, who was it? The blackmail folks that did that? I mean, where did that money go? Who deposited that money, and for what reason?
Yeah, so they had my account from like years earlier when we did the legitimate work together, and it's very easy to have somebody's account. And then they threw it into my account, and that gave Amazon and the feds enough fake evidence to make it look like, to indict me, to make it look like that I'm no good because I'm involved with them, with these bad guys. Had there been a had they really investigated, they could have asked the senior Amazon executive, did Ed ever bribe you? And she would have for sure said, no, I never even charged it. I was doing it all as a act of kindness to people, because I like helping people. And I found myself in this position where I'm able to save people's businesses, thousands of them, for free, all above board. So why wouldn't I do it? I enjoyed it, and it gave me great pleasure. But because I was framed on this one time, that gave a segue in to make it look like everything I do is corrupt, even though nothing I do is corrupt.
Do you think that was intentional? They made that deposit to make you take the heat and take the heat off of them?
Yes, because these guys ended up cooperating against me. Can you imagine? I'm being blackmailed, wow. I'm being harassed, I'm being mass emailed, I'm being framed, and then it's like, imagine I push somebody into the train tracks, and then you tell the person who got pushed in that if you don't admit that you did it, the guy who pushed you is going to cooperate. I mean, he's the bad guy, and you're the good guy. I'm the good guy here. But because it got mixed up, and because I was already indicted, so it made it look like everything I do was bad, when everything I do is good, and the things which looked bad, you just needed the additional information. But people are blackmailed, and people are happened, and had the feds really investigated this case, they would have said it's out of character. They even wrote one line on the indictment that, based on what they see, it seems out of character that I'll be dealing with these guys. Now, had they asked me, I would have said, yeah, because I was being, dragged by these guys, and I'm the victim because I was the one that was mass emailed, and I was just trying to, keep them calm. You know what it's like? My lawyer said this. It's like in the city, a lot of times you have people who they grab your like windshield wipers, correct? And so imagine you have a guy grabs your windshield wiper, and they try to get money for you. So you give the guy $5 to go away. And then that guy goes commits a crime, and they say that you, the guy who gave the $5, is part of the scheme.
Yeah.
So it was a nightmare. Yes, it was a nightmare. But what was even more troubling is that the years leading up to it, people kept trying to frame me, which I think was the FBI. Frame me, meaning they were offering like insider reinstatement. And I kept telling them, no. Everything I do is above board. So I'm living my life with complete integrity, above and beyond. I don't have to do this. And because Amazon doesn't like that I'm making these big groups, and because I'm successful in convincing these executives to open up these accounts, which should be open, and they were open, Amazon set the feds after me, unknowing to me. And they obviously couldn't find evidence because there's no evidence. And then they found me and these guys sort of like fighting, and I'm trying to like get them off me. And that connection was enough for them to incorrectly indict me. And the $100 million, which they said, if you look at the press releases, it said I was involved in a $100 million scheme, but that $100 million was because that one account, which I got framed, did $100 million in business. So can you imagine, right after this podcast, I send you an email and I say, okay, I killed the guy. And you're going to be, okay, whatever. Or I throw money into your account. You didn't do anything, right? And then I tell the feds that I paid you for killing someone. I mean, it's not true. You have to investigate. And that's what happened. And I became the lead defendant because I opened this one account. I was framed that I was bribing this executive, and I wasn't. I was just framed. I can't stop somebody from throwing money into my account and saying that I paid someone. It's completely not true. And it's their responsibility to investigate. So the main problem here was Amazon's relationship. They put a X on me, but the DOJ should take some ownership here, in my opinion, because they should have investigated. If they would have spoken to me for 5 minutes, everything would have been answered. If you see a normal person behaving improperly once or twice, and then you have additional information which gives the context, there you go, right? You have everything answered.
They're not interested in getting to the truth, or, as you said, they could have easily talked to that executive, like, did you accept money? No, you didn't. Okay, well, case closed, you know what I mean? But they don't take, their interest is only for getting another notch on their belt, if you will, getting another prosecution to validate their existence. We've seen this time and time again with others I've interviewed that are innocent but targeted. And it's an unfair advantage to the prosecution to have this relationship between these large corporations and DOJ to basically collude together with unlimited resources against someone that is like, can someone just talk to me and explain? Yeah. Can I have the opportunity to show evidence? As far as the group, I was curious as you were talking, is that group still active? Are you still involved with it anymore? Are you still a seller or anything?
Yeah, so because the accusations were so egregious, they didn't come close to making sense. So the seller community, and it was a blessing, they stood with me, people from all walks of life, because I said it's not true. And it took a long time until I, explained exactly what happened. I knew I would never do anything unethical ever, but because the allegations were, normally you think that something must be true. But because it was so extremely not true, and nobody also came out and against me, really. Nobody corroborated anything. So because it was so, didn't make sense at all, so the seller community stood with me. And throughout this whole horrible ordeal, which costed me a lot of money, I kept doing the suspensions and I kept doing the events, and the group went on Facebook, it went, I think, from 37,000 to 82,000 ever since this, indictment, if you want to call it that. But it was in my opinion, a major unfair injustice. It was a breakdown in the justice system where they put in the same indictment the most legitimate person and the most mischievous person, and they mixed it all together. You're an Amazon consultant, and they just screw it all together. And it was a complete train wreck, which they total breakdown of the justice system. It was shocking how they just couldn't get it right. And this is what happened. And the way it ended is, just so people know, that a lot of people said they wanted to just go to trial. Initially, I said I just have to say my story. I don't got to go to trial. And the reason why you can't go to trial in a case like this is because, first of all, Lena Khan, who used to be the FTC leader, she said that when she goes against Amazon outlaws the FTC 10-1. Now the DOJ is bigger than the FTC, so you have the DOJ and Amazon against a schmo like me. I can barely talk to my lawyer, and they would spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and I think they did on this case. So I would have to spend around $50 million to have a fair shot at it. There was a case, JP Morgan, or one case, these people are paying tens of millions of dollars to get to trial. So that's one reason why you can't go to trial. Another reason why you can't go to trial, and I've heard from a lot of people, that even if by some miracle someone gave me $50 million, they would do all kinds of tricks and spinning and twisting to find one email, which I don't think is a crime. Maybe they can present it as such. And like the example, what I would tell people, because they don't know anything about the seller community, is imagine you're in North Korea and you're a baseball player, and they accuse you of murder and armed assault. And you say, okay, murder is not true, armed assault is not true, and you show it. But then they say, can you at least admit that you stole second base? And stealing second base is part of the rules. It's considered legitimate. And what they would do is they were mixing up legitimate, not legitimate things which were considered legitimate in the sellers community, which they can present to a jury as not legit, none in the seller community. So like, for example, I've worked on over 12,000 accounts, me and my team. So one of the things they were saying is that the sellers submitted false information, and they have an appeals process, and which me and my team helps. And this appeals process, the way it works, is that they give you very little information, and you have to say you hired a new warehouse manager, and you did all kinds of things that it's not going to happen again. And so they don't really tell you what the issue is, but even if you start saying that you hired somebody new, they were saying that I submitted false information, like the seller submitted false information, like you hired somebody new, but you didn't. Now, that wasn't even true, but even if it would be true, this was like standard within the normal part. That was like stealing second base. And anything you did, they can just take the camera down, they could find one email, and they could project it as a major crime, even if it's within the seller community considered like normal. Like another thing was there was something called annotations, and annotations are like when a seller gets suspended, so they have these internal annotations which are from Amazon, which gives you a little bit like low-level seller support, which give you a little bit more information. But this was sold in Facebook and sold in newspapers, and there was no secret. People would show it to the Amazon executive. They can even get it from Amazon. But there were some times where I would use it. So they would say that's internal information. So they would present it as like a major crime, and they came after like bribery and like bribing Amazon employees to open up accounts and taking down competitors, and all that was not true. But then they would twist and spin because they never wanted to look bad. They would twist and spin, and they would take my 12,000 accounts, my millions of emails, and they would take a few things and they won't give it the proper context just to get the win. So this was a disgrace, but even if I came up with the $50 million, I was in a horrible position. And what happens is when they go after a schmo like me, so they know I'm not Trump, I'm not going to spend $50 million. So they don't need a case that's going to win in trial. They only need something which is going to sound pretty good in a press release, because they know I'm never going to fight it. So when Amazon's law firm goes to the DOJ and they say that we need to indict Ed Rosenberg, they don't say we need to indict Ed Rosenberg because he's making these groups and he's making petitions and he's organizing sellers and he's shining a light to how they mistreat third-party sellers. What they do is they say we need to get rid of Ed Rosenberg because he's corrupt, and here's the evidence. And they show the $55,000. Now that evidence is nonsense. I destroyed it in seconds. But they know that once you're falsely indicted, misleading information, you're like trapped. You're like underwater with bricks on your legs, and they have the advantage. So it's almost like everyone's taking advantage of the broken system. They know, it's like a mafia almost, like because they know that you can't fight them, they submit surface level evidence which can easily be debunked, like I debunked at the beginning. I was framed and I was blackmailed and I was mass emailed, and they take that and just to get you through the indictment stage. Then once you're indicted, you're screwed, and you're fighting this massive company, and that's their goal. So their goal is always they don't mind giving misleading information because they know once you're indicted, they throw a bunch of emails to the wall, and once you're in that horrible position, the guy's life is over. And the end result, what happened to me, is because I didn't know what to do because they didn't have a case and I couldn't go to trial, and like I explained, and no one knew what to do. So what I ended up doing is I just went on X and on Facebook and I just started like disputing it with the facts. All I had was the facts, and they had all the money and the power. You would think the facts would be enough. And And, and everybody was like cheering me on. If you go online, you'll see everyone's like, yeah, you go get them, because I was making sense. And then they came to me and they said that if I apologized for those annotations, which was true, which nobody in the seller community considered bribery, and it was not even an account suspension within Amazon. It's almost like stealing second base in baseball. And they told me that if I do that, they're going to let me stay in the Amazon sellers community, and which is very unusual. And they're going to recommend as part of my plea 2 years probation, which I already finished. So they gave me like a sweetheart deal, and they were, to the government's credibility, they did push back against Amazon, because Amazon basically wanted them to break my knees and to leave the industry, which didn't work. So there was a measure of vindication and there was a measure of justice here, but not enough. I spent years of my life dealing with something which could have been refuted in a 30-second conversation. It should have never happened. I spent $2 million, and now I have a criminal record which is completely distorted. It was completely not what they said it was. It was true that I'm an Amazon seller, and it's not perfect. And within the Amazon selling, there are things which could be presented a certain way, but they were using metrics against me at the end when they were desperate, which would have implicated 100% of the long-term sellers community. So that's why if you go online, the sellers community completely supported me. But the fact is I still have a criminal record, and I'm hoping that the president sees this and we make reforms, and that there shouldn't be a way, it shouldn't be so easy for a company to just go with nonsense information and then pressure them to ruin somebody's life. I could have ended up a lot worse. And I'm hoping the president sees this and other people see it and they say, no, this is not okay. This is not how America is supposed to work. And I get a pardon. That's what I'm hoping for.
What do you think that the motivation was for Amazon? I mean, clearly their system was not satisfactory if people that had done nothing wrong were just somehow almost automatically getting kicked off, almost if it was like AI or something. And so you were helping them get back on, which because of the legitimacy of that they're being a seller. So, which I think in turn would be good for Amazon's business. So what do you think was the motivation as far as Amazon's reason for having you be the fall guy?
So that's a great question. The reason why they put a mark on me is because there was a similar case on eBay where this woman, they made a movie out of it, where she was to eBay what I was to Amazon. Same idea, like not hostile, but just we would put out blogs and we would, it was like a central location off eBay for eBay sellers to discuss eBay. And a bunch of eBay executives, they used like mafia tactics to try to break her life. Like they sent disgusting things via email, they mailed her stuff, they harassed her physically. And those people went to jail, those are eBay executives. Amazon did exactly the same thing, but instead of using thuggery, they used law thuggery. And the reason why they did that is because they don't like when sellers organize. And even though I was helping Amazon and the personal executives did recognize my passion for helping sellers and for saving these businesses, even though that's on a personal level, they liked me, they came to my event, they invited me, it was very respectful. What they didn't like, Amazon Legal, is that I was shining a light and I was sort of unionizing these third-party sellers, and because they like fighting each one individually. They like saying, Amazon against Joe Schmo seller and Amazon against Jane and Amazon against Jack. When you organize it and you make petitions and you show that this is not a one-off issue, this is a systemic issue. So they identified me as a person who is organizing sellers sort of like a union, and they tried to break my knees. And again, this is very un-American because A, it wasn't a union, it wasn't hostile, it was very respectful. And B, even if I did make a union, you don't have a right to mislead the DOJ and send them after me, because they could have just told me, I want you to stop. And they were cheering me on. Amazon was kept emailing me and complimenting me how you're helping so, you're doing so good, and they invited me. The next thing I know, they backstabbed me and they send the DOJ saying I'm bribing Amazon sellers, and nothing could be further from the truth. It was literally comical.
So obviously your case is not isolated in the sense that there's plenty of examples, especially in recent years, of how Amazon can have basically direct access to the DOJ to go after who it wants. I mean, as I said, Amy Nelson has been on my show before, describing her situation where basically Amazon was able to go directly to the DOJ to essentially persecute and take down their family. So, one, why is this legal? Why does this channel exist to where large corporations can just have direct access to kind of use the DOJ to do their bidding, to bully people, and then and to that end, why do you think DOJ allows itself to be used like that? Like, what's in it for them?
Right. So that's a very good question. So the prosecutors in my case, I think there were 4. They kept leaving, and I think they all went to Microsoft or Boeing. And what happens is these prosecutors, they're getting paid like $150,000, $200,000 when they're in the DOJ, but they're getting experience and they're getting access to their old office. So when they leave DOJ, this $200,000 a year job, they go to Amazon, they go to Microsoft, and they get like $2 million. But they're not getting paid because they're great lawyers. They're getting paid because they can call up the old office and they can pitch a pre-written indictment, and they can say, hey, make it happen because we have evidence that this guy is bad. So it could be, and they want to make their clients happy. So if you're working for Microsoft or Amazon and they tell you, hey, knock out this guy, and you're going to prepare a case, and a lot of times Amazon gets it right. Like, do over like 70, 80 indictments, and sometimes they get it right. Normally they get it right, but because there's all these biases and because there's no chance of fighting it back, it leads to here and there a disgraceful injustice where they completely get the story wrong. And it calls into credibility every case, because if I'm $100 million defendant for receiving an email, literally receiving an email for somebody throwing money into my account, which is very easily debunked and was debunked, then how do I know any case is true? And I think what has to happen is that this channel has to be transparency. I tried getting through a FOIA email, I tried getting the information how it happened, because I'm sure it was, they didn't say stop corruption, they said stop Ed Rosenberg, and I couldn't get it. It's all protected. So I think there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes which have to be made. But this is a perfect use case where everything went wrong, with a complete breakdown, and they couldn't come close to getting it right. And I don't even mind Amazon having this relationship with the DOJ, because they're a big company with a lot of money and people are stealing from them. But there has to be a middle man in the middle who makes sure that this doesn't happen. Like, if they would have spoken to me, that should have been mandatory, because even if they would have spoken to me, they could have indicted me afterwards. What are you scared of? And because they have these direct access to it, it leads to them bending the facts in a way that it doesn't make sense. And as soon as the additional information comes in, which in this case was the blackmail and the frame job, and the fact that all those escalations to the senior Amazon employees was completely above board, acts of kindness, everything would have made sense. But by that point, you're already trapped in the hole. And I feel like it's a little bit by design. They're not trying to win a case, they're trying to win an indictment. And it's impossible to stop it if you don't speak to me and there's 100% indictment rate. Like, if you look at I think I saw out of 150,000 people who they tried to indict, only 6 were not. And I guarantee you, none of them were with Amazon. So I have no chance. Nobody spoke to me before the indictment. And then after the indictment, I can't talk to anybody. because I don't have the $50 million, and the only thing you can do is you can beg the prosecutors to have mercy on you. But why should they if they have every tool at your disposal to force you to plead for 5 years, 4 years? But when I went on X and when I went on Reddit, and again, they were somewhat fair in this case, and they saw that they got it wrong. So they, I pushed them off me enough to get me my life back. But this was not justice. It was almost like a deliberate injustice, like they were trying to get it wrong, knowing that once they get it wrong, there's nothing I could do. This is not how America should be.
No, absolutely not. And it's just terrible that you went through that. And so bring me through this journey. I mean, you were already dealing with this blackmail, and then how did you find out you were indicted? You just suddenly raided, or how did that work?
Right. So I had no idea that anything was going on. But I was almost like a radical when it comes to ethics. Like my kids, when this happened, I told them it's not true. We're all laughing because they know that I would never do anything.
Yeah.
It was so outrageous. And what happened is I have in the summer, I have a summer home, and my wife was, normally I'm in the city, but for whatever reason, as fate would have it, I was in my summer home, and my wife and my daughter, I see phone calls from my house, missed calls. And so finally I reached them, and they say that 30 FBI agents came to the house to execute a search warrant. I was like, what? 30 people for what? And my wife said she has no idea. I said, I'm sure they came for a reason. Like, what would be the reason they came? So, they said they were looking for cash because they couldn't find evidence that I was paying the executives, so they thought I was paying them with cash. So stupid, like how? Yeah, they literally I mean this respectfully, it sounded like they were on drugs. The things they were saying. Again, they weren't trying to bring a case; they were trying to bring an indictment just to hurt me. And so right away, I called the lawyer and I told my lawyer that they got the whole thing wrong, and if I can explain it. So my lawyer said that the only thing they want is cooperation against the executives. I said everything was completely above board, and unless you want me to lie, I said I can't lie and say I paid them if I didn't. As a matter of fact, I didn't get paid. I said, but they need to have evidence. Don't they have evidence? So my lawyer said that when they're being an indictment, they normally have evidence. I said, well, the evidence is wrong. And they're misreading it. I said, if you show me what you have, I can explain it, but they're completely wrong. And finally, the next thing I know, thank God I was never arrested, and I never was in jail for even a minute, which is a blessing, because normally when you're indicted, you go to jail for a few days. That never happened. And like I said, 99.9% of people, when you're in my position, like a lead defendant of a major scandal, you're in jail for many years and you're out of business. So my lawyer said I beat 1 in 10,000 odds because I stayed in business and I didn't go to jail. But, the facts, should be the only thing that matters. And this was a complete train wreck. And that's what happened. When I saw the indictment, I started laughing. It looked like it was written by ChatGPT. The whole thing, it said about the frame job, which I told them, yeah, money went into my account, but I was framed. If I put money into your account, doesn't mean you did anything wrong. You can't stop that. And it had a few communication in which I was being blackmailed and trying to prevent a mass email attack, which went anyways, that I was being blackmailed. I said, if I'm communicating with someone just so I shouldn't be mass emailed, and then I'm mass emailed anyways, obviously it's a real threat. That's my crime. And I was couldn't believe that this was it. I completely shredded it. But at the end, they were taking standard, regular activities, which could be presented not legitimate, even for legitimate seller, like sending false information. And they were taking things which would have criminalized basically clicking on Amazon. So it was completely not how they presented it. And that's why I'm coming out to say the story. And I did already the probation, and I went through, it was tormenting. I spent $2 million in legal fees, $2 million just to get to this point. And, I hope that this is fixed. And it's not just my case. There were other cases like this of people where they get the whole story wrong. And there's one guy I know spent $50 million and he still ended up in jail. There's the One Taste case, which I don't understand, but it seems like it's way off. There's Amy Nelson, and this has to stop. And there's basic things they can do to get it to stop. And one of them is, before you indict someone, speak to me. Here's the evidence, speak to me. And if you still want to go ahead, go ahead. Another thing they could do is they can show who initiated it. And they can ask Amazon, they should push back. Like, why can't you sue them? Why can't you call them up and tell them to stop bribing Amazon executives? Of course, I wasn't. But why can't you get clarification? And before you go and you embarrass somebody in front of the whole world for something you didn't do, it's not appropriate to get half the information. You got to get the story straight. And they couldn't get the story straight, and I believe it was done on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, this is an epidemic of how our country has declined into this attitude of guilty until proven innocent, when it's supposed to be the other way around. I mean, all these measures were taken, and you were essentially set before the American people or anybody that could see what was happening or knew about the indictment as guilty before you even had an opportunity to talk to anyone or have true representation, true ability to defend yourself. And then essentially what I find in these cases like this is that it's essentially extortion, because they're like, you either have to do this or you have to lie or whatever. And, you ultimately pay a price. You ended up basically being extorted to say that you were guilty because you wouldn't have been able to afford saying that you were innocent. But I did find it interesting. I want to make sure that we get this in, just because just before I was doing this interview with you, because of course this is concerning Amazon, I happened to see this other post about Amazon and under their own heat. And maybe this is some poetic justice, if you will. This is a post by Ricardo, if we could bring that up. But basically, this whole post is talking about how Amazon has been running a secret price manipulation operation with Levi's, Home Depot, Walmart, and many more. So basically what would happen is that, let's say Walmart has a pair of Levi's for $19 that Amazon is selling for $26. Well, Amazon would directly contact Levi's and say, hey, we got a problem here. Walmart's selling it cheaper. Got to do something about this. So Levi's would then reach out to Walmart, pressure them to bring the price up to 26 or 27 or something like that. And Amazon wouldn't adjust the price lower. It was just basically trying to detract from the competition, and the consumer who could have saved money is not able to save money because Amazon bullied these other companies. This even included this post says Allergen, the company that makes eye drops. They were suppressing the company on Amazon because it had been cheaper on another site. Well, long story short, this is now moving into going to be seen. What's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, the Attorney General in California. Antitrust. That's the word I was looking for. I was like, what kind of a trial? It's antitrust trials scheduled for 2027. So hopefully they can actually be held accountable for this, because this ultimately was hurting the American consumer. So I didn't know if you happened to see that and if you had any reaction to that, because to me, I'm like, isn't that poetic justice? Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, Amazon always just settles these. They'll just pay. There was an FTC case where they said that they couldn't cancel Prime. It's hard for someone to cancel Prime. And Amazon released a statement that Amazon paid $2.5 billion, but they said they didn't do anything wrong. It's exactly like, I don't have $2.5 billion to pay anyone, but they said they didn't do anything wrong, but they're paying because they want to move on, which is exactly what, people in my position do, especially that they gave me a very good deal. But this thing with the price manipulation is very, very, very low on the totem pole on what Amazon does to third-party sellers. What they do to third-party sellers is well documented, and because they try to keep it on the low and on the hush, and because I was effectively, even though it came from a good place, I was trying to help sellers, because I was effectively shining a light at it, it became, I became a problem, and that's why I believe they sent it to DOJ afterwards. Even if I was organizing a union and trying to get Amazon in trouble, which I was not, I was just helping those individual sellers, still didn't give them the right to do that. But, 100 times more on that, I was doing it in good conscience, and I was trying to help them. And if they didn't want me helping sellers, they could have just sent me an email or a letter or cease and desist. And I was not doing anything hostile. It's an American value, helping legitimate sellers legitimately, and helping them follow the rules is an American value. And the end result is that there are a lot of, like in overseas, especially in China, there's a lot of cheating and counterfeiters and bribery going on. And there, the DOJ can't reach to. So it ends up being that Amazon gets the DOJ to go after the legitimate sellers, and the corrupt people, especially in China, are all good. So are you happy that your taxpayers are being used, your tax money is being used to destroy legitimate businesses, trying to help legitimate businesses, and not going after the people who are actually cheaters? And they got the whole thing completely twisted, and it was a complete breakdown of the justice system. And I hope they use this as a use case to make sure it doesn't happen again. And again, I'm thankful that it wasn't any worse, and that we got out of it, standing.
Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, you want at minimum a pardon for having to be put in this situation. And I think that's a fair ask. We did have President Trump, who seemed to care about that. He even had an executive order to have Ed Martin lead a weaponization of government group to investigate things like this. Unfortunately, it seems like that was dissolved under Todd Blanche, which we've been pretty critical of Todd Blanche on this network anyway, because we have a lot of guests on who indicate that he seems to be impeding President Trump's effort to carry out the things that he truly cares about. However, Ed Martin is still, I think, over pardons. And so have you tried to reach out for a pardon?
Yeah, so I did apply for a pardon. I just did it myself, and I started a petition. If you want to put the link, we can do that. And to your point, I think a pardon would be a good start. I don't think it would be full justice. I think at a minimum they should pay my lawyer fees back. They should explain how it happened. I think they should apologize. For the, even if they were 1% right, or you said I was the lead defendant of $100 million scheme, and the next thing I know, I'm getting probation and nothing happened. But I wasted 3 years of my life. I spent $2 million in legal fees, and again, I was this close from ending up for years in jail.
Yeah. So is there anything that we can do to help you in the effort to get the president's attention, or the attention of whoever's handling the pardons right now?
Yeah, so the best thing you could do is, first of all, if you're an Amazon seller, or, to join the group, because we're doing great. It keeps getting bigger and bigger. So we could put the link below. And I still, believe that, in helping the legitimate sellers, and that there should be a legitimate way and transparency. I think that helps Amazon. I think that helps the seller. So they were trying to present me like I'm a faker. Like he presents to help, but he's really not. And it ended up being I'm helping for free through official channels. And there's a petition you can sign. And if someone can send us to the president to flush it away, that'll be the best. It'll be it'll be a
Where
good
can we
first
find
step.
the petition?
It's on my Twitter profile, and I guess we could put in the link below.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and folks can find you at Ed_Rosenberg on X and get even more detail about your case, as well as I can tell you've been really good about sharing others who've had similar cases as well, and just continuing to draw attention to this ongoing problem that we have with the weaponized justice system that is far too friendly with large corporations and is really hurting the everyday man and ultimately the American dream, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Well, Ed, thank you so much for sharing. Go ahead.
I just want to say that they literally got it exactly wrong. Instead of going after the bad guys, they went after the good guy and said he's the bad guy and twisted the story around and then begged me to take probation because I ran out of money. This is not a good use of taxpayer money.
No, absolutely not. Well, again, thank you for sharing your story. I hope that it draws more attention to the ongoing problem that we have, and I hope more people reach out to help you get that pardon and just be on the alert because we still have this problem. Thank you so much, Ed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, just want to take a moment to thank those that make this show possible. We have friends over at Richardson Nutritional Center. That's rncstore.com. They use the medical protocols of Dr. John Richardson, who treated thousands of patients for the C word, cancer, in the 1970s with an all-natural metabolic protocol. So for those who want a daily prevention protocol to help support their immune system, RNC's prevention bundle includes 90 days of 100 milligrams of vitamin B17, pancreatic enzymes, and vitamin B15. So just go to rncstore.com. You can get a discount with the code KL to get your discount. Also, you can use that same promo code KL over at mypillow.com. Mypillow.com is how we keep Lindell TV coming at you. Keep it funded by your shopping at mypillow.com. Just use that promo code KL to get deep discounts. Let them know that you're watching the show. And I do want to mention the scripture of the day. President Trump read from 2 Chronicles 7:11 through 22 for the event where they're reading the entire Bible there in the swamp of DC. And this particular verse, actually this is labeled wrong, probably my fault, but it's 7:11:14 is what it is. I mean, ultimately the president is reading 11 through 22, but this is just from 7:11:14. And the verse is, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. So what an incredible verse for our president to be sharing, because we need repentance before we can get blessed, right? Well, I do want to encourage you to join me at christyleetv.locals.com to continue to support my work for a small subscription fee. I post there and I do a daily Bible devotional show, which I would love for you to join me at 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern AM each day, and would appreciate if you take about 15 minutes to do a Bible devotional with me each day. So check that out. Well, thanks again for watching. Don't forget to spread the word and share with friends. Get free with Christy Lee on LindellTV.com.